Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to our congregation, we want to get to know you and share part of your journey. If this place is already your spiritual home, welcome once more. We need one another, and it is good to be together again. Because we care for one another's safety, our congregation is gathering online during this long season of coronavirus pandemic. Nevertheless, through the gifts of technology, we continue to celebrate community and connections as we lean into the values of justice, compassion, and reason. Together, we learn the love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service this morning. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love.
Arise, O souls, arise.
Good morning, and welcome to the All Souls online worship gathering for December 6th, 2020. As the coronavirus pandemic continues to spread around us, we come together through the gift of technology in order to protect our most vulnerable members and to keep one another safe during this public health crisis. We rejoice in the prospect that an effective vaccine may soon be available, and we mourn for our loved ones and neighbors as the death toll continues to climb. We offer our profound admiration and gratitude to the healthcare workers whose skill and risk enable many who have been stricken to recover and ease the suffering of those who do not survive. We renew our call upon ourselves and others to behave in such ways as serve the common good in this time of great danger. Also, on this week of World AIDS Day, we remember another plague now entering its 5th decade of HIV/AIDS. Since the recognition of the AIDS virus and its routes of transmission in the early 1980s, more than 1 million Americans have died from HIV-related conditions, including a significant cohort of a generation of gay men. As scientific advances in treatment protocols available to those who have access to medical care have achieved the ability to reduce viral loads to undetectable, AIDS infection has become for many a survivable chronic condition. Now, a new generation of young gay men mourns the absence of elders who might have been their leaders, advocates, and role models. The AIDS Service Foundation, together with artist and activist Jared Horman, recently created a mural for the Casey Care Health Center building. Reflecting on this work and its message, Horman writes, "As a queer artist and community organizer, one of the biggest frustrations I've faced is the lack of visible leadership and mentors readily available in the LGBTQ plus community. Learning about the reality of the AIDS epidemic and our administration's blatant disregard of queer deaths left me feeling angry and lost and aimless compared to my cis straight peers who had figures in all fields to look to and to seek help from. You can check out this engaging work at 35th and Broadway. As we lift up the memories of all those lost to AIDS in the past 40 years, both here in the US and all over the world, including lands where even now the epidemic is not well controlled, may we hold in our hearts not only those friends and lovers, parents and siblings who held them dear personally and grieved their loss, but also the students they never taught, the patients they never healed, the art they never made, the truth they never told, the good they never served. Every tear in the interdependent web diminishes us all and sends ripples of loss across the generations. Although the candles of Advent began last week, this is the first Sunday of December, with its building anticipation of Hanukkah, solstice, Christmas, Kwanzaa, and best of all, the end of the year 2020. Many of the most ancient religious structures we know of were carefully built to capture the light of the rising sun at the solstice, the pivot of the year. In various ways, our holidays and calendars still celebrate this hinge of time when winter takes firm hold and the cycle of time ends one season of growth and begins to prepare for another. The people looked east, watching the sun and the stars to be assured of the earth's faithfulness and the returning light. We too scan the horizon of history, seeking the coming of dawn and a new hope. We kindle the light of our many chalices this morning to welcome the season of celebration when we await the return of the sun and the earth's renewal. We invoke the light of hope that shines brightest in the night sky and prepare to keep festival as our ancestors did, so that we might not surrender to despair. Courage, my friends, dig in and endure for yet a while. Light your flame and tend its burning, but look to the east, for the dawn rises and a new year is on the way. I invite you now to share in the chat where your chalice of hope is burning, and then we will speak our words of covenant and share our opening hymn. Now let's join together in speaking once again our covenant promises to this community. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
People look east, the time is near, of the crowning of the year. Make your hearts fair as you are able, trim the hearth and set the table. People look east and sing today, love the guest is on the way. Furrows be glad, the earth is there. One more seed is planted there. Give up your strength, the seed to nourish, that in course the flower may flourish. People look east and people look east. Love the rose is on the way. Stars keep the watch when night is dim. One more light the bowl shall brim, shining beyond the frosty weather, bright as sun and moon together. People look east and east. Love the star is on the way.
The traditional practice of Advent teaches us that life itself takes place in the interval between now and whatever it is that we are waiting for. In the time of anticipation is really all the time there is. If we choose to, we can make this season of expectation an opportunity for nurturing our faith and affirming our hope, for rejoicing and deepening our capacity for peace. The second candle of Advent is the candle of faith, also known as the Bethlehem candle. It reminds us that believing in the possibility of a better world is not something that we do alone. It has to be a collective project, something that the whole town is in on. It begins by living faithfully with our families and our neighbors, by sharing a vision of the kind of inclusive community that we all want to be part of. Each year at the solstice holiday season, the candle of faith invites us to remember that change is something we create together and pass on from one generation to those who follow, because the world we long for will not be built in a single lifetime. Many candles together create a path of light that we can follow. When we believe in ourselves and each other, we can create a more just and abundant and peaceful future for everyone. As this season of anticipation deepens, may the candle of faith burn brightly within and for each of us and among us all. Our virtual Mitten tree this year is a reminder that not all people in our Kansas City community have the resources for a safe, comfortable, and happy holiday season. Particularly challenging is the situation of those youth who age out of the structured foster care system when they turn 18. Already scarred by the trauma of separation from their original families, many of these very young adults have endured the insecurity of multiple placements over the years, sometimes in situations that prove additionally abusive. Rarely do they have the opportunity to attend college or any kind of support network as they begin the daunting tasks of adult life. 1 in 5 of them will become homeless upon leaving the system. For too many of them, that spiral will end in prison, addiction, lifelong mental illness, or premature death. Pride Haven of Save Inc. is a drop-in and emergency shelter for young people 18 to 24 who are facing homelessness, with a particular focus on those who are gay, trans, or HIV positive. However, all youth in need are welcome, regardless of their sexuality or gender identity. Among the many needs experienced by these young people is warm clothing, including hats, gloves, and outerwear suitable for spending long times outside in winter conditions. Pride Haven works to provide homeless teens with support, encouragement, and resources as they struggle to build lives in which they can thrive. As we seek safe ways of observing our cherished holiday traditions here at All Souls, we are offering a virtual Mitten tree this year, where parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, even siblings, can dedicate a gift to the Mitten tree in honor of their favorite young persons. All the proceeds will go to Pride Haven to help them provide winter clothes for homeless youth at their shelter and drop-in center. You can send in a check or use your credit card with the link in the chat. Tell us the first names of the children or others that you want to honor, and we will send you an inscribed sparkly mitten for them to add to their tree and include them in our weekly mitten tree, like this. There are endless demands on our generosity at this time of year. There are many worthy charities making year-end appeals, as well as Christmas gifts to buy. There is a crucial election to support in Georgia, and our own All Souls justice programs like the Warming Center, the Hunger Outreach Team, and the Mitten Tree. We hope that All Souls itself is also on your list of organizations deserving your support. Our staff and leaders are working constantly to find new ways to bring us through this pandemic time with our mission and our institutional strength intact. Today, for example, we hope you are planning to join us for our board-sponsored Yule Box Sunday Plus meal. Don't forget to pick up starting at 2 o'clock and join us on Zoom at 5:30. We all need these community connections more than ever now, and it will be essential to rebuild a robust in-person program whenever that becomes safely possible. Your donations are carrying us during these challenging months, and we are deeply grateful for your investment. This morning's offering will now be thankfully received.
Christmas makes you feel emotional.
It may bring parties or thoughts devotional.
Whatever happens or what may be, here is what Christmas time brings to me. City sidewalks,
Busy sidewalks,
dressed in holiday style. In the air there's a feeling of Christmas.
children laughing,
People passing, meeting smile after smile, and on every street corner you hear silver bells,
silver bells,
silver bells,
silver bells.
It's Christmas time in the city. In the breeze, soon it will be Christmas Day. Sing the street lights,
even stoplights,
sing the bright red and green, as the shoppers rush home with their treasures.
hear the snow crunch,
See the kids blush, this is Santa's big scene, and above all this also you're here. Silver bells,
silver bells,
silver bells, it's Christmas time in the city. Really, in the breeze, soon it will be Christmas Day. City sidewalks, big fireworks, dressed in holiday style. It's Christmas time in the city. Children laughing, people dancing, living smile after smile everywhere. Soon it will be Christmas Day. Soon it will be Christmas Day.
Let's say together the words of dedication for our offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
From Holy the Firm and Teaching a Stone to Talk by Annie Dillard. It is the second Sunday in Advent. I've been attending Catholic Mass for only a year. Before that, the handiest church was congregational. On Sunday mornings, I would quit the house and wander down the hill to the white frame church in the firs. On a big Sunday, there might be 20 of us there. Often, I was the only person under 60. Week after week, I climbed the long steps to that little church, entered, and took a seat with a few of my neighbors. Week after week, I was moved by the pitiableness of the bare linoleum floor sacristy, which no flowers could soften or cheer, by the terrible singing I so loved, by the fatigued Bible readings, and the lagging emptiness and dilution of the liturgy, the horrifying vacuity of the sermon, and by the fog of dreary senselessness pervading the whole, which existed alongside and probably caused the wonder of the fact that we came, we returned, we showed up. Week after week, we went through with it. The members there are of mixed denominations. The minister is a Congregationalist and wears a white shirt. This man knows God. "Good morning," he would say after the first hymn and invocation, startling me witless every time. And we all shouted back, "Good morning!" The church women would all bring flowers for the altar. They hauled in arrangements as big as hedges of wayside herbs in season and flowers from their gardens, huge bunches of foliage and blossoms as tall as I am, in vases the size of tubs. And the altar still looked empty, and irredeemably linoleum and beige. We had a wretched singer once, a guest from a Canadian congregation, a hulking blonde girl with chopped hair and big shoulders, who wore tinted spectacles and a long lacy dress and sang, grinning to faltering accompaniment, an entirely secular song about mountains. Nothing could have been more apparent than that God loved this girl. Nothing could more surely convince me of God's unending mercy than the continued existence on earth of the church. Recently, I returned to that congregational church for an ecumenical service. A Catholic priest and the minister served grape juice communion. No one, least of all the organist, could find the opening hymn. Then no one knew it, then no one could sing it anyway. There was no sermon, only announcements. The priest proudly introduced the rascally acolyte who was going to light the 2 Advent candles. As we all could plainly see, the rascally acolyte had already lighted them. Both the priest and the ministers were professionals, were old hands. They bungled with dignity and aplomb. Both were at ease and awed. Both were half confident and controlled, and half bewildered and whispering. I could hear them. "Where is it? Haven't you got it? I thought you had it." The higher Christian churches, where, if anywhere, I belong, came at God with an unwarranted air of professionalism, with authority and pomp, as though they knew what they were doing, as though people in themselves were an appropriate set of creatures to have dealings with God. I often think of the set pieces of liturgy as certain words which people have successfully addressed to God without getting killed. In the high churches, they saunter through the liturgy like Mohawks along a strand of scaffolding who have long since forgotten their danger. If God were to blast such a service to bits, the congregation would be, I believe, genuinely shocked. But in the low churches, you expect it in any minute. This is the beginning of wisdom.
I am 16. It is my last year in high school. I'm dressed in my Christmas best, velvet. We pull into the driveway of Our Lady of Victory Roman Catholic Parish just after 10 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Between the snowbanks, the sidewalk is lined with luminaria. I think of the people who filled the bags with sand, placed them carefully in line, set the candles, and lit them. I am full of anticipation, expectation, eagerness. We meet the rest of the choir members in the school building. After warming up, we climb the snowy incline to the church. We've changed our shoes and put on our robes, green with gold stoles for the holiday. We had rehearsed for months to bring our ministry, not performance, our director always reminded us, to the liturgy of the solemnity of the Nativity of Jesus. For 45 minutes, the sanctuary choir sings as people come into the worship space. Believer after believer comes to the end of a pew, genuflects, crosses themselves, and slides into place. The gold tabernacle, the huge crucifix, the gold and marble altar, all these things, as they always are, the fixtures of worship throughout my childhood. And there is more. The nativity scene below the altar, the Jesse tree, a Christmas tree covered with lights and bows and ornaments depicting the genealogy of Jesus, stood in one corner. And when the procession began, we would see the beautifully embroidered gold and white vestments of the priests. The church is darkened. At the back, we pick up our bells, those of us who are in the handbell choir. At midnight, the great low bell begins to peal, and then the rest of us, one by one, ringing our bells as though we were in the steeples of churches, one to the other, ringing out the joy of the night. I imagine Mary in the stable, laboring. I look up at the great crucifix and down at the nativity scene. My mind spins as the incense begins to bellow. I become inseparable from what is happening, from the liturgy unfolding. As the organ swells, the opening hymn begins and the procession steps off. All of us behind the cross, carried by one of the choir members. The rest of us, 2 by 2, bowing as we reach the front of the sanctuary. Choir members first, then the choir director, altar servers bearing candles and incense, priest, and the main celebrant priest. Kyrie eleison, Sanctus, Credo, Agnus Dei, the parts of the Mass, just like a Sunday, but exalted by the solemnity, the glory, and delight of Christmas. At 2 a.m., knowing I would sing at 2 more Masses in the morning, I climbed into bed, still glowing. This was Christmas for me. Yes, there were gifts. Yes, there were family traditions, but this glory of liturgical beauty is what Christmas truly was for me. I realized there was so much more I could write. Just about 1 year's expression of the Christmas Eve midnight liturgy, so much more. I could also write about how I was cast out from my friends and fellow choristers when I revealed that I was lesbian. I could write about the, to me, horrific politics of that parish and how they've gotten worse and worse over the years. There is pain to write about, sure. But that's not what strikes me now. What strikes me as I think about the midnight Mass and Advent and Lent and Easter and Pentecost is the way that reverence was expressed through beauty and care. And of course that these liturgies are where I learned what it is to have good worship or powerful transformative ritual. A chorister carried the cross in our procession. Young men burned the incense. Women embroidered the vestments. Families put out the luminaria. We, many of us at least, felt the welcome weight of our parts, our responsibilities. I know that I felt keenly that every note I sang was for the glory of God, by which I meant my singing was ministry. My music was not for me, not only for pleasure, but for exaltation. Nowadays, the religious worlds in which I move, the Unitarian Universalist and the Wiccan world, leave me with questions. When do we create our spaces for exaltation of something wonderful, something glorious, some ultimate beauty? Do we even know what is wonderful, glorious, or beautiful? I have no desire to return to Roman Catholicism or even to Christianity. That said, I ask, as I do over and over again, what might we, my co-religionists, learn from the reverence expressed in beauty and care?
Here's the thing I like about Joe Biden, better and better all the time. He is so clearly a man of reverence, not because he has an enduring and visible commitment to a faith tradition, the practice of which is obviously meaningful to him, though I like that. Not because his personal history of bereavement shows his capacity to turn heartbreak into wisdom and compassion, though I like that too. But more important, the president-elect has the kind of reverence that is indispensable in anyone who holds power, the crucial difference between a statesman and a tyrant, which is reverence for the just rule of law, for the principles of democracy and their expression in the Constitution, for the competence and independent judgment of those on whom he must rely, and above all, for the people he is called upon to lead, their vulnerability, their integrity, their humanity, no different from his own. Like many of our fellow Americans, I find none of these qualities in his predecessor. The idea of reverence for those they serve as an essential quality in a leader is one of the central themes in a lovely book by Professor Paul Woodruff called Reverence, Renewing a Forgotten Virtue. When it was published in 2001, Aaron Sorkin's TV show The West Wing was at the height of its popularity, and I, among others, awaited each new episode eagerly. Woodruff's explication of the reverence essential to good leadership helped me to understand a part of the subtleties I witnessed each week in the Bartlett White House. How people who were in the midst of demanding work would take time to put on their suit jackets before entering the Oval Office. How even the most strained conversation there always ended with the words, "Thank you, Mr. President." How everyone stood whenever the president entered the room. These rituals were expressions of reverence, not for Jed Bartlett the man, even though most of the characters respected him deeply, but for the office of the president, and through that office, for the people they were all working to serve. As a general rule, these rituals of reverence fall into the category of what I am calling curated reverence. So do many of the rituals of the holiday season, which is part of why I bring this up at the moment, and we'll get there presently. Curated reverence is distinct from the experience that I have called in other contexts primal reverence. Primal reverence is the organic, unbidden feeling of being overwhelmed and awed by something wonderfully larger than ourselves. It usually occurs in one of three contexts. The most familiar is probably the beauty, abundance, and mystery of the natural world. Being struck by the fathomless immensity of the seashore, or the stars in the night sky, the long view of autumn leaves from a mountaintop, the intense loveliness of an opening flower, or the scent of a rain-washed prairie. It is more than just aesthetic appreciation. It is also a sense of being called to gratitude and humility, that there is something not only pleasing, but inherently worthwhile and good about existence, and this world in particular. Another context of primal reverence is morality, our instinctive response to stories of self-sacrificial courage, honesty, and care. The soldier who throws himself on the grenade to protect his comrades. The mother who starves so that her children may eat. The child who gives up a longed-for gift so that someone else will not be deprived. The villagers who hide Jews in their basements from the Nazis. Michael Servetus, who burns at the stake rather than deny the truth as he understands it. These stories that bring a lump to the throat and move us to ponder the quality of our own humanity and to erect memorials so that generations not yet born might remember. The same reverence arises in the more painful moral context as well. It is what happens when you walk through the Peace and Justice Lynching Memorial, or into the gates at Dachau, or over the Trail of Tears, or find the names of Waitstill and Martha Sharp in the Garden of the Righteous at Yad Vashem. It is the recognition that just as natural beauty has a deeply moral dimension, so moral heroism has a profoundly touching beauty. The third context of primal reverence is the experience of great love. The realization that another person finds you in particular precious and is made whole by your presence. That you want someone else's happiness so intensely that you are willing to sacrifice your own. The intention to become a better person in order to be what someone else believes you are, and to make the world a better place for their sake. These are all moments of primal reverence, as are the moments of love's inevitable twin, grief. The tears of a spouse widowed after 50 years are holy, and the anguish of a mother who loses a child, the mystery of how an empty dog bed can ache so much, and the baffled impulse to share a joke that Dad would have appreciated. To stand in front of a coffin, or to watch the ashes blow and settle onto the river, and to know gratitude for the love that was, inseparable from the grief that is primal reverence at its most poignant. These are experiences that we have little or no choice about. They come to us in the course of life, sometimes seizing us by force, blasting through the triviality of our days, whether we are prepared for them or not, whether or not we have any vocabulary for talking about them or understanding them. They leave us stuttering and pointing, grabbing other people by the lapels, demanding, "Did you see that? Listen to this. Look, look. And this is where curated reverence begins to arise, because we have an innately human need to talk about these things, to call attention to them and seek to replicate them, to remind ourselves that such things have happened to us, that once, for a moment, our lives blazed with meaning and clarity and depth, and everything was lit up with infinite importance, including our own compromised existence, and it was so beautiful. It was holy, everything, and we knew it. That's the key. Of course, everything is holy all the time anyway. Nothing changed in that moment except our vision. And some of us get so hooked by that moment that we go around ever afterwards asking, how can we get it back? How do we learn to see the world that way all the time? This is Emily's question to the stage manager in the play Our Town. Do any human beings ever realize life while they have it? Every minute? To which he replies, no. The saints and the poets, maybe. They do some. Why the saints and the poets? Because I think they are the technicians of reverence. They are the curators of the words and the actions by which we fumble around trying to renew that quality of vision, that illuminated depth of assent to the good in the world that is somehow the best of our essential humanity. Not that we could really stand it, living with that kind of intensity all the time. As the Zen masters observe after enlightenment, the laundry. Inevitably, we fall out of that primal reverence back into prosaic existence. But the awareness of that dimension doesn't go away. Indeed, it seems urgent to remember that it happened, to mark the grave, to wear the wedding ring, to make sure that condos are not built on the grounds of the concentration camp, to write the poems and publish the stories and paint the pictures that try, forever unsuccessfully, to capture that illuminated vision, or at least testify to its overwhelming reality and truth. We retrace our steps to the places and the moments that brought it on, to the broken words that came to our lips. Glory, alleluia, amazing grace, how great thou art. What wondrous love is this? And all manner of things shall be well. Baruch atah Adonai. Praise, O my heart. Go, tell it on the mountain. Come, all ye faithful. Allah Akbar. Lift every voice and sing, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. We search our muscle memory. Did we fling out our arms, throw ourselves prostrate on the ground, fall to our knees, cover our faces, whirl in ecstasy? How do we name that power of primal reverence? How do we engrave it on our memory, summon it, beg it to fall around us and happen again? Of course, what makes that quality of vision awesome and fascinating is that we do not, after all, control it. The Spirit bloweth where it listeth. It does not come at our bidding, but arises sometimes when we least expect it and deserts us in the moment of our most careful preparation. And yet, something about that preparation in itself is an act of reverence. Not the same as being blasted willy-nilly by the Spirit, but a gesture of willingness, an assent, and an affirmation that this matters. just to show up like Annie Dillard's benighted churchgoers every week, inviting that presence and repeating Alleluia and Baruch Atah, because once in our lives it did happen, and you never know. Maybe this week. Now let me be very clear about this. I am not saying that every week we come together hoping for a guest appearance by the Holy Spirit, and if we don't get slammed with primal reverence on a given Sunday, that was a dud. That is not what I am about here. We come every Sunday to remember and be reminded that we have been slammed with primal reverence once or twice in our lives before now, and to affirm and to be grateful that we are the kind of creatures who have the capacity for that experience, to cultivate our vocabulary for it and our openness to it. We come together to do what intention can do, which is not to manipulate reverence in its raw form, but to curate the tools and vessels and awareness that will help us to recognize and honor it whenever it does happen to us. To me, this is the essential difference between religion and philosophy. You can have an elaborate, elegant, coherent philosophy of life that offers you no help to name or practice the experience of reverence, which is why what I want is a religion, thank you very much, because otherwise I am left helpless on the seashore pointing and babbling, and the existence or otherwise of a self-conscious deity is the least of my problems. Curated reverence is what we have a choice about. It is how we put ourselves into a position of humility and expectation that shapes the way we live as a response to the unchosen impact of primal reverence. It is how we cultivate that capacity in ourselves so that we might act reverently, even as we are applying prosaic sunburn lotion and trying to wash the sand out of our beach towels. The laundry, remember? The practices of curated reverence are the only way I know of to keep powerful leaders from becoming deluded tyrants. The constant small gestures that point back to the people one serves as the source of authority and honor, not one's own genius. The sage Confucius understood this, as Paul Woodruff points out. The first step in a leader's task, said the ancient Chinese advisor, is what he called the rectification of names. Petty administrators must not take on the prerogatives of princes and emperors, because then the people do not know who is in charge or who to expect reverent behavior from. If the duke or the prince acts with reverence toward heaven, the source of all the 10,000 things, then his deputies will act with reverence toward him, and the people will act properly toward the officials, and reverence will come full circle back to the people. A leader who is captured by his own ego and neglects the rituals of reverence disrupts this flow, and the machinery of good government jangles to a halt and descends into corruption. 500 years before the Common Era, that's when Confucius lived. Long time ago, I'm just saying. People make this mistake about Christmas, too, and all the other holidays of solstice light, and that is doubly important this year. If we think that the celebration is a failure or doesn't count because we can't actually be with the people we love, we are missing the point about love and generosity and goodwill on earth and all the rest of it. Christmas doesn't make any of that happen. Christmas is a curated memory of the times when it did happen. The wonder of our own childhoods, perhaps, or the generosity of a saint who once tossed gifts down the chimney for 3 desperate young women, or the miracle of a baby, even one born in very unpromising personal and political circumstances. Did your heart never leap with unexpected joy in the presence of a newborn and leave you wanting to fall on your knees with amazement? That's what all that gold embroidery of midnight mass is about. To remind us, to prompt the memory, and help us see the world again through the eyes of reverence. And then, a funny thing happens. Those acts of curated reverence, those practices of not forgetting the wonder that we have known, they become triggers in themselves, so that the bells and the candlelight and the music soaring in the white marble cathedral leave that teenage choir member glowing in her sleep with exaltation. This, my dearly beloved, is what I am going for every week, and why this awkward, make it up as we go along online worship service is something other than an overlong TED Talk. Yes, we love to come together in community, to do that mutual limbic regulation that our species is designed for, to sing and breathe together, to laugh and eat and hug and shake hands and share the news of our lives, all those things that at this point could get us killed. But that's not all of it. In fact, I want to suggest that lovely as that part is, it is a side benefit. I also believe that it is necessary for our moral health, and the more privilege we enjoy, the more crucial it is to go out of our way to serve the disenfranchised and the unfortunate, to encounter directly the human beings whose lives, had our luck been otherwise, might have been our own, or may have been, or may yet be. As well as to conspire together to build a world in which luck plays less of a role than justice, and compassion is public policy as well as private impulse. But that too, I think, essentially is a side benefit to being part of a community of curated reverence. What a community of faith is about, a community of covenant memory and covenant promise, is to deliberately recall the most deeply reverent moments of our lives, to practice with intention of forethought the not forgetting of that capacity to perceive the holiness at the heart of every blooming, buzzing, confusing strand of this interdependent web that we talk about. To name it over and over 100,000 names, because no name is ever the thing itself, because of course it isn't a thing anyway. All those chalices, and the familiar words and the adorable children and the music and the poetry and the ashes of those we remember in the garden and the rainbow arches and the mitten tree and the Christmas Eve candles, every poignant thing that tries to melt our hearts is for this one purpose: to remind us of reverence, to recall us to that state of mind and soul where the world sings with glory and meaning, and we are summoned again to rise as the better angels of our nature, because that is who we most authentically are. No other institution, no other hour in the week exists for this purpose. Reverence can occur anytime, anywhere, but it is curated here. recollected and practiced and cherished here in the religious community, the community whose task it is to reconnect the many dimensions of our lives, but none more crucially than this, our capacity and our hunger to look upon the world with the eyes of reverence. And yet, I want to suggest that this is also the work of Christmas and of Hanukkah and Yuletide, and even an invention as recent as Kwanzaa or as seemingly secular as New Year's Eve. You see, time was when fire was a life-saving mystery, and the holly and the ivy were miraculously green in the snow. Time was when the light burned in the darkness over and over for 8 whole nights. Time was when a child who should have amounted to nothing survived to change the world. Time was when our ancestors were stunned silly by those moments, and they babbled and pointed, and we've been laying little dolls in tiny mangers ever since, and hanging wreaths and lighting candles, and curating those moments of reverence with stuff we buy at Costco. And if we have to do it on Zoom this year so it doesn't kill us, by God, we'll do that too. It's who we are. This is why I don't buy that you have to believe the story about the Maccabees to find reverence in Hanukkah, or believe in Jesus or St. Nicholas to find reverence in Christmas, or be a Druid pagan to find reverence in the longest night. It's all curated, which doesn't mean not real. It just means cherished as part of a shared heritage that has the power to inspire us to experience reverence again and again, to slake our thirst for wonder at the unending fountain of light that humanity has remembered and imagined down the ages. Back around the time I was born, the prominent humanist educator and author Percival Chubb was challenged. I wasn't there, but I'm sure this is how it went down. Percival Chubb was challenged to explain why an atheist would celebrate Christmas. Snark, we would call it today. And he responded by writing a song about it. A song that his ethical culture people and our people today could sing, to explain why it is and what it is that we believe in Christmas. Anthony and I meant to fix the male-female binaries that were part of his worldview, but the singers got ahead of us recording, so we apologize for that anachronism. But I think Percival Chubb had it right, pretty much, about the curated reverence of this whole season, about the quintessentially human truth that is packed into the assorted magnificences of this whole Yuletide extravaganza. Belief is not the point. Belief is not what leaves you glowing at 2 a.m. It's reverence that does that. It's the light that reminds us of the greater light and deeper truth we have glimpsed at the heart of the life of all that is. The light that we do not own or control, but that once you have seen, you can never entirely forget. The light that shines in the darkness of the season, and the darkness has not overcome it. That light, the light is the point. Let's sing.
comes returning cheer, rung out from towers and steeples at midnight of the year. And we will join at Christmas the song of hope and joy that finds its theme at Christmas in every girl and boy. The flame of life will dwindle as fades the sunset sky, until a child shall kindle new light and raise it high. Then sing we all at Christmas the song of that new birth, which holds the hope of Christmas and brings its joy to earth, which knits the generations, each daughter and each son, beyond all tribes and nations, and makes the many one. Shine out, ye lights of Christmas, from hearth and tree and star, and let the warmth of Christmas shed kindness near and far, and clang ye bells of Christmas upon the frosty air, and may the joy of Christmas spread gladness everywhere.
Dear ones, these days of festival have place in the calendar of the waning year, so that we might draw again near to wonder and joy, so that we might dream once more of a night sky filled with seen stars, so that our hearts might not grow too hard to shelter hope and love newborn into the world. Let the magic of this season have its way with you. Embrace the reverence and be blessed. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. For all these we carry in our minds and hearts until the time shall come when we will be together again. Thank you for being part of our gathering this morning. We hope that you will join us now for informal conversation at our Zoom social hour, which you can connect to from the All Souls website homepage. If you would like help making your Christmas Eve candle video, you can spend a few moments with Angie this afternoon at church when you come by to pick up your meal, and she will make it happen for you. I hope you can be with us next Sunday when we explore the traditions of Hanukkah and consider the allure of transgression. Until then, everyone, please take care, stay safe, and be well this week.